3, 2. Hey, listen, everybody, if you've been through what we just went through, to get everybody online, you'd understand why we are just happy to be here. Tonight, we got a special guest. I'll let you, Phil, tell a little more about it, but I'm just happy to be here with you, and thank you, Miss Danielle, for getting online with us. Phil, go ahead.
Well, Danielle Patterson, of course, is our guest tonight. Danielle, welcome to the show. Been looking forward to this. I know you've got a powerful story, and first thing I want to ask you is, tell us a little bit about yourself. I think you do live in Southside. Where did you grow up, and have you lived in Southside your entire life?
Actually, no, and I don't live in Southside anymore.
You don't? Okay.
No, I haven't updated my Facebook status. I live in Trussville now, but I've actually lived all over the place. I was born in Trussville, and then in middle school, I moved to Madison, and then for my senior year, I moved down to Fort Lauderdale and actually graduated high school down there. This was all with my dad's job that we moved. And then after Florida, we moved back up to Alabama, and that's when we moved to Southside. And from there, I wound up getting married and going out on my own back to Trussville. And that's where I am now.
So that's how you gotten there now. Of course, I know you went to school. Are you in the healthcare? Do you do? I think are you in the healthcare? You went to school.
Yes, I was. I am no longer. I was laid off during the whole COVID pandemic back in 2020. But yeah, that's what I went to school for. I was in the medical field for about 15 years.
Yeah. Well, what is it you're doing now?
Now I'm not working. Just, keeping up with appointments and stuff like that. But I help out my parents a lot.
Yeah. So just kind of maintaining now until, of course, we'll get to that further. But, being on the transplant list, it kind of puts things on hold just a little bit.
It does. It does. Because you have to be within a certain amount of hours to the hospital. And, but, just trying to not put my life on hold so much to where I forget to live.
Yeah, but, definitely. So, yeah, and tell us some of the things you try to do to stay busy, because I know when I went through what you're going through, if I sit around, I thought about things too much, and that's when kind of the negative thinking comes in. So if you keep yourself busy, it helps to keep you positive.
Exactly. Well, I read a lot, but mainly just spending time with family. It's all going to trail back to the whole transplant thing, but making up for lost time in a lot of ways. Spending time with family. I try to, socialize with people from church, and I do like different activities within the community, like, things like arts and crafts classes and stuff like that. Just, meeting new people, and nothing extravagant by any means, but I travel with my dad a lot. That's some kind of work that we do. We do hot shot deliveries where we deliver parts to different plants. That's just 2 days a week, but it's still something to do.
Yeah, keeps your mind busy, and I mean, that's what everybody needs to be doing. But since you were diagnosed and and have the liver issue, do you take a little extra time? And I think the way my thinking changed, that the little things become so important.
Absolutely, they do. They really do. Things that I would always put on the back burner because, what I thought was important at the time, we're no longer what used to be big things are no longer significant, and the little things have now taken over, and life is so much better that way.
Yeah, and I think so. And that's kind of the way I think. Let's worry about today. Tomorrow will take care of itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, don't you? You have a son, right?
I do. He's 17.
Yeah. He's 17, so he's still in school. Where does he go to school at?
Springville.
He goes to Greenville. Oh, okay. So he's just about to graduate.
No,
Does he
he
play
goes
anything?
he goes to Springville.
Springville. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Which is not far. I thought you said Greenville, but Springville. So he's just about to graduate. Is he involved in any kind of athletics or anything?
No, he fishes a lot. He fishes and hunts all the time.
Oh, country boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you about this. Of course, you were involved in the transplant games. Before we get into your story, I want to ask you about this. I want to talk to you about that. So don't skip it. How did you get involved? I know you're on the liver transplant list. How did you get involved with the transplant games that went on, of course, in Birmingham in July, the 2024 games? How did you get involved in that? And how did you hear about it?
I go to church with Stan Smith, which was the team manager or one of the team managers. And when I started going to church there, that was actually before I was put on the transplant waiting list. But we knew that it was, within the near future, and just kind of word of mouth, started talking to people. And then they, were like, well, let me introduce you to this guy because he's all involved in the transplant stuff. And so I met him. And from there, it was full force. He had me, thinking about the transplant games way before registration opened up, way before I was even on the waiting list. So just going to church with him, he headed it off. And through him, I've met lots of people.
Yeah. When I got involved, when I heard about it, I decided I wanted to try to, help out. So I signed up for the executive committee but I also wanted to compete. But, Stan and Lyric and Lale, they did an outstanding job. The meetings we would go to and they would tell us about what we were going to see, what to expect. They did an outstanding job because when we got to the games, a lot of the things they told us about, of course, we didn't realize how much emotional than it was than what they told us. They told us about, certain things, but they kept us well informed. And the thing I really enjoyed about the Olympic Games, it is so well organized, and Stan and Lyric and Leo and everybody that was involved that did a great job of keeping us informed.
Yes, they did. There was not much that came by surprise, I noticed when we were there. They very well prepared us. It was very, very organized.
Yeah, very well. Did you get in on a lot of the pin trading?
Oh, I did. I did.
Yeah, that's amazing. Not only, of course, they told us about the pin trading. They told us that it would become a passion and you would enjoy doing it. But I didn't realize it gave you an opportunity to strike up conversations. You got to meet people and hear their story, not just get a pin from them. And that's what really made it worthwhile.
Yeah. I was kind of like, they keep saying it's a big deal, but I don't really know how big of a deal it is. And I was like, it's just pins. Well, when I was doing the 5K, my mom and dad were standing at the finish line. And by the time I'd gotten done, I think my mom had like 2 or 3 pins already. So she started the process. And from there, even that early on in the transplant games, that was the second day. There were people who were like, no, I've already got Alabama. So then it was like, okay, this is really a competition. You've got to get to people before everybody else does.
Yeah, and it's strange how you would find, and of course, I've heard several stories. Like I met some people from New York and we traded pins. We were standing in the hallway and the lady had told me about, they had been to several transplant games and that she goes, you were going to meet so many people and so many stories. And she goes, I'm going to tell you something right now. She goes, you have your rows and you're going to put your rows in the middle of a table. But then when you hear about the story involved in these games, you're going to want to reach and grab and pull your rows back because you are going to be so inspired from hearing what everybody else has went through.
Yes. At the end of the 5K, there was this mother and daughter there. They were from Ohio, and the daughter was a liver recipient. And I got to hear some of her story and shared some of mine with hers. And that was the beginning of understanding what's actually behind the pen trading. Just nobody's story is the same. And just when you think you've heard it all, you hear something more. And, it really showed me that people's perspective on life is a whole lot different than a lot of the world that we see. They've got a totally different reason for living, and they just have, I don't know, just their idea of a good life you really can't compare anything to it. It's very, very inspirational.
Yeah, because a lot of us, a lot of us have one certain thing in common. All the family, the donor families, you have that thing in common, so you're already linked. And like when I played on the basketball team, there was 5 of us. 2 of us was liver recipients, 2 was kidney recipients, one was. And I told the guys after we got done, I said, we had this certain bond when we got here, but now that the Olympics is over with and we're finished, it's like a brotherhood now.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I've made so many friends there and through the transplant games, and it's like, when the transplant games are over, you still want to, get to hang out with these people and still keep in contact with them.
Yeah, definitely. So are you planning to go 2 years from now, wherever it may be?
I am. And at that point, I hope that I can compete.
Yes, because you was only able to do the 5K because you're not a recipient yet. What was your take? What was your take on the opening ceremony? Boy, it was very emotional.
Yes, it was. Man, it left me speechless. To hear people's stories, that were up on stage, and I got a lot out of just waiting back in the hallway, and when we were all lining up to even come out on stage, getting to just mingle with other states, that close, and getting to meet people that you haven't met already, and then to walk out there and to see people that were up in the tiered seating. The place was just jam packed, and when everybody had to turn on their flashlight, man, that gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, my big thing when I was down on the floor is when the donor families came in. God, that was just very emotional. They had signs, tears was running down their face. It was just an amazing night.
Yeah, and then the ones that had pictures of their lost loved ones, that really, putting a face to a name to a family, that was very special.
And then you've got special people involved too. And I want to go back to Stan. Then we're going to move on. I want to move on and start talking about your story. It's like when we was talking about Stan, he lost his wife back in 2007, but to hear him talk, it's like she hadn't been gone maybe a year or so. He does a wonderful job of keeping her memory alive and keeping her legacy alive, and he's one of the most motivated people I've ever been around.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he gets the ball rolling. I know when I first met him and he was talking about his wife, that's the same exact thing I thought, was maybe she just recently passed. And, he was just wanting to do this as a tribute to her, like maybe a one-time thing. Well, as I got to know him and I got to know other people that knew him, I started putting all the pieces together that's going to be that's what he's going to spend the rest of his life doing, is living out her legacy. I've met people at UAB, just at some of my appointments, some of the employees there, they know Stan, and Stan wasn't even a patient, but they know him, and they know him in the efforts that he's put in, since he's lost his wife. And,
Yeah,
you just mentioned his name, and it just, there's something that comes with his name. People that
yeah,
know him have really been blessed.
yeah, definitely. So he has inspired a lot of people, and and he has, he's done a great job of keeping these games going. And I think the games we had in hosting in Birmingham really energized the Team Alabama, and everybody I've talked to is planning to go to the next games. And boy, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had 50, 60, 70, 80 people go with us, wherever that might be. That would be a great time, a great time.
Oh yeah. To get to travel together.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some people there on Team Alabama that have been, to many of the games in the past, and that's just something that they look forward to, and so that's kind of how I want to be too.
Yeah,
You know, just-
as soon as we were over with, me and Chris was like, okay, where's the next one?
yeah,
We were ready to go again. Well, speaking of UAB, I was involved in UAB when I went through my transplant. Wonderful people that work at the UAB hospital. Everybody I tell, nothing but good. They're always positive, always there to help you. Very honest, very transparent. And you can't say enough about them, because when you're going through, what you're going through and what I went through, you need positive reinforcement.
you do. They make you feel. My biggest thing with them is that they make you feel like you're not alone, because the transplant journey can be very isolating. And that was one of the things that I found in the transplant games, is there's a lot of people that are like me. And that's the same way at UAB. They make you feel, they try to take all the worry away.
Yeah, definitely. So, that's like when I was going through my liver issues, they found lesions in my liver, which was one of those good news, bad news things. The good news was that it put me higher on the list. My meal score went up. But, they never mentioned the word cancer. They just told me what they were going to do. This is what we're going to do. This is the treatment we're going to give you, and never at any time said anything negative.
Yeah, they have a positive outlook on everything, and they have a way of delivering what we would consider bad news, to make you feel like, oh yeah, I'm going to get through this. This, it's just another step in the journey.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, Danielle, let's get into your story. Tell us, share what you want to share. This is your time. I want you to let us know what led up to you being diagnosed with liver disease. And we'll go from there, kind of, what your thoughts were when you found out, what caused it, anything that you may want to share.
Sure. And you break in if you have a question, or, want to dive further onto a subject. But my liver disease is cirrhosis, and it is caused from alcohol. I I had years of like social drinking, but it got real heavy. Really, after I was laid off during COVID, because at that point I felt like I had lost my purpose, because I wasn't working and doing what I love to do. And um, I, I just, I had nothing else to do. So, I started drinking. Well, it had gotten bad enough to where, I don't know if with other liver disease you have hepatic encephalopathy, but I had hepatic encephalopathy, and I had gotten hospitalized for that in 2022. And of course, that was a whole month that I don't recall. The whole time I was in the hospital, my parents have had to relay information of that to me. But at that point, I was diagnosed with cirrhosis. I'd had a prior hospitalization a few years prior that was due to alcohol, but at that point, it hadn't gotten to the level that it was when I was diagnosed with cirrhosis. So in 2022, I quit drinking. It was August 3rd was my last drink. So August 4th is my sobriety day. And I just celebrated 2 years of sobriety last week. But I was so sick in the hospital to the point that my parents were told that I probably wouldn't live 6 months without a new liver. And that was 2 years ago. I got out of the hospital and I went into a treatment facility, and it was a faith-based program. I was there for 6 months, and that completely changed my life. They were able to, they gave me different outlooks on living, and I found my faith again. And my faith is what has gotten me through. But anyway, when I was in treatment, I was very, very blessed because they were able to take me back and forth to my doctor's appointments and to, keep all my medicines filled and all that, to where, I was trying to take care of myself, under doctor's orders enough to get me through the treatment for 6 months, and then to be able to get out of there and follow up or start care at UAB to be able to get put on the transplant list. So it was a process, from the word go. But when I started following up with a doctor while I was in treatment, he told me that he didn't know how I was doing as well as I was, that he had no words to explain it, because like my MELD score had dropped from up in the high 30s down to a 16 within just like 4 months. And to be put on the waiting list, you have to have at least a score of 15 or higher. But he didn't have words to explain it. He said he had never seen that before. And I knew the reason that it had happened, and that was because of my faith. God's the one that has gotten me this far. So I started seeing everyone at UAB in July of 2023. I did all my evaluation testing, which took 3 days. 3 days of testing, and then I finally got put on the list, and it was on October 28th of last year. Well, I was only on the list for a month before I had to be placed as inactive on the list. And that was because my rheumatologist, which here, this is another step in the journey. I do have lupus and Sjogren's syndrome, and luckily neither of those have started attacking my kidneys yet. Thank the Lord. But my rheumatologist had done blood work and found out that I had TB. And I guess at some point in time in my healthcare career, I'd called it and didn't know. So I had to be treated for that. Of course, I did. It wasn't active. They called it latent TB. So while I was off of the list, I was having to follow up with the health department. And then I had to follow up with infectious disease. And anyway, 4 months of treatment, I tolerated that well. And I got put back on the list at the beginning of May of this year. And so it's just, I've had some health issues along the way, but I feel good. I'm maintaining. I do have to take a lot of medicine to maintain. And that's one thing I'm looking forward to once I do get a transplant, is being able to cut out at least half of that medicine. But I do good now, but when I was first, you know, in treatment, um, I had some pretty rough days. Just trying to get to some sort of a baseline because that was in the beginning of the new cirrhosis diagnosis. And, there was a lot of tinkering with different medicine dosages and, figuring out what was right and what wasn't right and too much or too little of this. And anyway, they finally found a good medium. And I've been on the same exact doses of medicine for the past 2 years. So we're at a level spot right now. And, just kind of.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I want to interrupt you right here, Danielle. Randy, who's the host of our show, he has, of course, he's not, in liver failure or anything, but he battled alcoholism, so he knows exactly what you're going through.
It was sitting here telling your story, Danielle. The thing that struck me, I've been sober 24 years, and God bless you for finding it in a faith-based program. I got sobered in a court order, my fourth attempt in a court order rehab. But I had a question I wanted to ask you. When I first got sober, especially those first couple of years, it was an emotional roller coaster. But you're also doing that, and you're dealing with your liver diagnosis. Um, does that make it exceptional roller coaster ride for you, or is that something you've been able to just kind of put in a separate chamber?
No, actually, since you asked, the place I went to, yes, it was, it was a rehab, but I don't like to say the word rehab. I say treatment facility because they treated a whole lot more than my alcoholism.
Right.
Part of that treatment was doing a lot of really, really, really hard soul searching and dealing with, the causes that started your drinking and, you know, uh, th- getting down to the bottom, like the root cause, and just getting that stuff out in the open. It was so, so hard.
Yeah.
But since I did that, it was cleansing. And I haven't had to go back and deal with those demons since I've dealt with them. And so now it's just the roller coaster of my liver. Sure, there are days, anniversaries, stuff like that are harder than others, but it's not what it used to be.
During my drinking, and I was a very, 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 very heavy drinker. I would go to the doctor, and I would drink myself into a kind of a stupor, and they would test my liver at the time. And in each one of those tests, it kept getting worse and it kept getting worse. And the doctor would almost warn me, if you don't slow down now, if you don't slow down now, if this ain't warning enough. Did you get that kind of opportunity? Because it sounds like your liver kind of failed almost instantaneously on you.
I did get a warning just 3 years prior when they said to not do this again or you will wind up where I am now. And, you know, I that was when, big things in my life were taken front and center, and those are the things that are no longer significant. It was a matter of, um, you know, I went back to drinking because I was like, well, I feel pretty good. I could handle just like a couple here and there. No big deal. You know, I'll deal with it. It'll be fine. Well, I did that over and over and over until it landed me to 2022. And I don't remember that entire hospitalization because I was not in a coma, but um, my brain. I don't know if you've ever heard the term wet brain.
Yeah, very much.
That's hepatic encephalopathy. That I mean, you've you've kind of your brain is just not working right. You've got to get rid of some of the toxins that your liver is not filtering like it's supposed to, and that are, getting up to your brain. And so I take medicine for that daily. But yeah, I had a warning, but I dismissed it.
Yeah, I had a bunch of them, so don't feel guilty because I had about 9 of those, and you know, and I don't even know if Phil knows this story, but I like to share it with you. You just said something that stayed with me. I went to rehab, and I mean the perfect rehab. It got my life back together, got my girlfriend back, got my career back, got everything back. I mean, it was like God put His hands on me, and everything was perfect again. I decided one night to have a 6 pack, and I did after work. Within 48 hours, I was in the worst part of the town I live in looking for drugs and on a bender that eventually led for me to getting sober. So, all of us, it seems like alcoholics by nature, when you start want to go, I think, I think that's a little bit of the trick it plays on you.
Yeah. Yep. And everybody's rock bottom is at a different level than others. Some may be deeper than others. And some, probably including me, hit rock bottom and then dig sideways.
Yeah, yeah, I'm right there with you. But I'm gonna turn you back over to Phil. I just wanted to give you kind of a pat on the back. Don't sometimes, some of the ramifications are bad, but it takes a lot to get your life turned. And it's like somebody tells me sometimes it's like it's been 20 something years, but it was kind of like watching one of those cruise liners turn at sea. I just barely, it took years for me to get to where you're at 2 years later. And that seemed like one of the hardest battles. So
Yeah.
I want to praise you for that because that's not easy.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I had even asked Phil before this uh, was put into play, but I said, "Is it okay for me to talk about this? Because this is my story and it's the only story I know, but there's so much stigma around that topic. And, there's a lot of uneducated society as well to go along with that stigma. So, people have their opinions, but like I said, this is the only story I know. This is what got me here, but this is also what changed my life."
It's
Yeah, well,
amazing. The journey is worth the end. Just keep your boat turning to the right journey, and you'll get there.
Thank you.
of course, Danielle, talking about that, and you and I discussed it, and I wanted you to be transparent, tell your story because there's somebody out there going to hear it and going to be motivated by your story, and going back to, where you was talking about you learned to be, changed your faith. God puts us all here for a reason, and I think when I interviewed Tabitha, when I interviewed Wesley, of course, I've been through the same thing, and you have too. Something comes along that shakes your tree. And, and I think all 4 of us, we have one thing in common that we believed, we believed in God, but we were all kind of sort of maybe on the fence. And I think that He shakes your tree and He knows what He's going to do with your life and He's going to clear a path for you, but He wants you to become a follower. He don't want you to stand on that fence.
Right. And I had gone to church, my entire life, but my faith was never as strong as it is now. Um, and because I've nearly been to the end, of my road, but He brought me back from that. And I can't wake up every day and know that I'm here if not for Him.
Yeah, because he has a thing in store for you. That's like when I my liver came from a 33-year-old. And I asked God, I said, why? He said, why would you? I said, my heart is fine. I'm 50. I was 53 at the time. He was only 33. He had a life to live. If this is the end for me, I'm okay with it. I said, but how come you didn't make it to where he could possibly get my heart? Because I know you could make that happen. And I got one answer, and it was only, your work's not done here. So he has a purpose for every one of us.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Each new day that I have is a day that I wasn't supposed to have. And so, I've never, during this whole journey, I actually have not sat down and said, why me? Because at this point, I realize this is me. This is who I am. And same thing, I've got a purpose. I may be living out that purpose right now. It may be something ahead, down the road, but there's something in store for me, and I've kept a very positive attitude through the whole thing. I know it sounds kind of cliche and kind of, yeah, that's what you're supposed to say, but getting bad lab reports, getting bad test results, getting, reports that you don't want to hear from doctors. I haven't gotten upset about that, gotten down. I've just been like, okay, well, I'm going to get through this and on to the next thing. This is, it's just another step in my journey. That's what I always say. Anytime something new gets thrown at me, it's just another step in my journey, and it's going to add a little more color to my story when I get to tell it.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, you just continue the path. There's going to be obstacles, because if there's not, you'll take things for granted. The good Lord's not going to make it easy for you, but it shows you that, things are not ever going to be taken for granted. But Danielle, when you first got diagnosed, and of course, I'm sure you worked along with the doctor at UAB, did they give you the do's and don'ts? Because they basically told me, of course, they want me to stay away from fried foods, be sure you eat a lot of protein, alcohol and smoking is a no-no. And they said that, when we do the testing on you, there's a lot of things we can tell by doing testing on you. If you're not going to help yourself, we're not going to be able to help you. And, and I have been told that I had non-alcohol cirrhosis liver, but it's like 10 times worse to take a drink for a person that's in that kind of failure than for a person that drinks with their liver being bad. So they said that was an especially no-no. What were some of the guidelines they had you go by so that you can maintain your health?
Same thing. The diet was the most important. And, that's, with you bringing that up, that's another reason that where I noticed the biggest change was when I got out of treatment. I was finally able to be in control of my own food, my own meal planning, my own diet. And I noticed a significant change in feeling better and swelling going down and stuff like that, where, in treatment, the meals are cooked for mass quantities. And so you really can't, tell them to take away salt here, or, you can't eat that. You just have to kind of eat what they give you. But yeah, diet was number one. The protein, low sodium or no sodium. And I don't eat red meats. I only eat chicken and turkey usually. But yeah, their testing, for their alcohol testing, they can trace it back, I think, for like 6 months. It may even be longer. But I'm glad that they do that, because it is kind of an accountability thing as well, and which I like that, because it does keep me accountable. I do say, well, I'm never going to drink again. And, I can't, because unlike, some people who you either decide not to drink again because that's your choice. Whereas me, if I drink again, it's going to kill me. It's a life or death thing with me. But, that does keep me accountable. And I like the fact too, is that it even shows my family that, I can be held accountable as well. But yeah, they they do they have some pretty strict guidelines for you to follow to stay on the waiting list.
Yeah, definitely. So, of course, so mine was, my ammonia level kept going up. I had to take medications for that. I had um, the whatever what it's called, Chrissy, varices in my esophagus. That was a big problem. I know that was a big thing for Tabitha. She had, mine never ruptured, but I still had them, so I had to take medications for that. There was so many things you had to do. Of course, my liver was so bad. I was down to 168 pounds when I had my transplant. My bilirubin was 12. My whole system was just so toxic. I don't think I was near death, but I wasn't going to last too much longer. But yeah, it was a tough row, and that's like when I would go in, and everybody said, "Well, you need to eat protein, but you may not want to eat that much beef." Well, my body was so bad that the doctors told me, "You eat any kind of protein you can get a hold of. The beef ain't going to hurt you because your body is, basically eating itself. That's what it ends up doing, and of course, it eat a lot of my muscle mass." And that's that's the bad thing with your liver going bad. Is that it's sick, and it's destroying really everything with it, because it's really the most powerful organ in the body.
Yeah, it is. Same as you. I've lost, all of my muscle mass, and you really can't build any muscle back up. So, uh, but and then the varices, that was one of the issues I had when I was very, very sick in the hospital. My parents had said that they had wanted to scope me at that time, but I was actively bleeding too bad that they couldn't. And the paracentesis, I had 4 of those, um, and then finally I couldn't have any more done. They said that at that point my disease had become chronic, and the fluid collection had become chronic, that it was soaking into the tissue of my abdominal wall. So there was no fluid, like they couldn't physically drain fluid out.
Yeah. Because I hadn't got to that point, but I was still a sick puppy. It was tough to go through. Well, Danielle, of course, you're on the transplant waiting list, but the little things have changed a little bit since I had my transplant. Of course, I heard of this when I went through the program. Of course, I know my wife did a lot of extensive research. She goes, "Phil, we can take you to Vanderbilt. We can go to Emory. We can go to the Mayo Clinic." But I told her, I was so trustworthy of Birmingham Hospital, UAB. I said, "Honey, I don't want to go nowhere. They know who I am. They know what my limitations are." I said, "I've played by the rules. So, I want to stay here because, I'm going to take my chances, because I feel like at some point, maybe something will come through." Well, now you're in a position, you're on the waiting list, have been on the waiting list, but now UAB is fixing to start the live donor program, and you're involved in that.
Yeah, so I'm the same as you. I've heard people mention do the dual listing, but I'm kind of like, I've gotten comfortable at UAB, and I really don't want to change, all of that. So I was just going to stay here. I did not even know that was even possible to be a living liver donor. Kidney donors, they can do living kidney donation. You've heard of that time and time again, but this was something new to me. I didn't really wrap my head around the process of it. And then, this goes back to the transplant games. We had someone on our team who was an altruistic living liver donor, living kidney donor. And I thought that was just incredible. And then also during the transplant games, there was a lady that reached out to me. She said that she had prayed and prayed about it, and she wants to volunteer to be a living donor for me. We have the same blood type. which is a blessing in and of itself because I'm an O positive, and so I thought I was just going to be on the list for ages.
Mhm.
But she reached out to me, and so at that point, I I couldn't really understand it. Like I don't it like it just wasn't sinking in. It just seemed too good to be true that someone would be willing to do that for me. Someone that used to be such, just a person that people really didn't want to be around. Much less donate part of an organ to me. Well, I told her, I was like, well, we'll have to probably go to Vanderbilt or to another hospital. I think Piedmont in Atlanta may do the living donor program. But I just knew that we were going to have to go to a different hospital. And I said, if that's okay with you, then I'm willing to do whatever I need to do. Well, then she said that uh, through her occupation, she works a lot with organ donation. And she said that she knew UAB would be starting their living donor program this fall. And so I reached out to my care coordinator and I let her know, what I just learned. And so my coordinator said that she would pass the message along to, it was a couple of different doctors and the living liver donor coordinator. And so when I went for my yearly reevaluation, because that's another thing, as long as you're on the list, you have to have your testing, redone yearly to make sure that you are still healthy enough to be transplanted. So when I went to do that in July, I met with the doctor there, and she is the doctor that is spearheading the living donor program. She said that I'd be a perfect candidate for it, that uh, there are only very few people on the waiting list right now that would be a candidate because there are so many characteristics and things that are involved. You have to be just healthy enough to where your body could tolerate a partial liver, but to compensate for about 2 months while that partial liver is regenerating into a fully functioning liver. Which, all this, she just threw so much information at me at once, but it was pretty neat. So she said that my potential donor would have to go through, all of her testing, which is similar to the testing that I had to do. And they have to look at body size and different things like that to make sure that her liver would, fit into my body to into my abdominal cavity where it would go. And just all kinds of different things to make sure that we are the perfect match. And so right now, I'm just waiting to, hear what's next. I think my potential donor started some testing last week. I'm not sure, how far along she's gotten in that, but just waiting to hear. And so it may be this fall. We may be the first. I'm not real sure. It's still kind of all out in the unknown to me, but it is possibly in the works. The doctor said that she had been looking at my chart for a while now because I guess, she already had in the back of her mind that she was going to be starting this program, and she had known for a while that I'd be a perfect candidate. It's her and another doctor that are starting it off. Uh, but yeah, it's something neat that's going to be happening, and I guess we should see where it goes.
Yeah,
And
should
that,
be exciting.
I think, and that
Yeah.
way, it'll take me off the waiting list, and like the doctor said, it'll open up an opportunity for a liver to go to another patient. So a living donor actually saves 2 patients.
Yes, definitely. So don't they take a friend of mine, he's been diagnosed. He's just been sent to Birmingham, and he said they talked to him about the program if his liver was to get that bad, but they think he can maintain for a while. But that's what he said. Did they take like 40% of that person's liver and put it in your body?
I'm not sure the exact percentage. I think they kind of compare my liver to hers and see maybe which is going to be best suited for me. I'm not 100% sure. I just know it's partial.
Yeah. Well, tell me this: who is your coordinator, and who are the doctors you're involved with? Because some I know, and of course, some people would like to hear their names.
My coordinator is Kim Rayner. She's awesome. My hepatologist is Dr. Fettig, and then his nurse practitioner is Cherie Reed. And I'd seen Dr. Cannon, one of the surgeons, at my initial evaluation last year. But since then, I saw Dr. Locke when I had to get reactivated on the waiting list after the TB treatment. And then most recently, it was Dr. Shake. She's the one that is doing the living donor program. And, I'd kind of heard off and on here and there that UAB used to do a living liver donor program. And I asked about that. And she said that several years back, there was a physician who was trying to get the program started up and running. But before it took hold, he had transferred to a different hospital. So it never actually was established.
Oh, so of course, that's wonderful. It's going to be a great program. Of course, UAB Hospital has grown so much, even from the time I've been down there. And, you talked about Dr. Cannon. He was part of, my physician crew, but Dr. Locke's the one that did my transplant surgery. And of course, Dr. Brendan McGuire was my liver doctor while I was going through this. Of course, I'm still going through clinical stuff. But it's a wonderful staff down there, and this is going to be great. Of course, it would be nice to be the first one that gets a live donor, but if you're one of the first, that would be wonderful. And I know you have to sit back and think, Danielle, when this is all said and done, what are some of the things you're looking forward to doing? I know there's probably things out there, what you would call a bucket list, like I finished my degree. I'm doing a lot more things than I've ever done before. Randy here finally taught me into doing podcasting. I'm doing a lot more things, reaching out and trying to get a lot more done, because life is short. You need to go see and go do everything you can do.
It is, and if anything will make you realize just how short life is, it's this transplant journey. Let's see. Since I have started the transplant journey, and getting things in order in my life, I have reconnected with a lot of family, and that has done my soul so well. Family that I hadn't talked to in a while. I'm so connected with them now. So obviously spending, more and more time with them. But the most important thing I think that I want to accomplish post-transplant would be likely to go back to school for something. I'm not sure yet, but I do, without a shadow of a doubt, want to be involved in organ donation somehow, some way, because it's just it's such a big part of my life at this point that I would like to continue to be involved in it. And just from all the people that we've met at the transplant games, I'd like to be more involved with them more often.
Yeah, definitely. So I understand. And of course, and we need to, talk about this. That remind me what you just said is, the legacy of hope. People need to realize how important organ donation is, because it saves so many lives. I mean, if it wasn't for somebody who selflessly, donated their organ, I might not be here today. And it's an important part of life. And it's like I was on the basketball court and we were playing, and there was so many people in there. And I told Chrissy, I said, there's a bunch of ghosts in here. There's a bunch of people that are not supposed to be here, but they are supposed to be here because there's a purpose and there's a reason why they're all here. We'll meet some of them, but there's a whole lot of people in this room. And, and it goes back to what you were talking about. They have a totally different frame of mind. The little things are important. That's like when we play basketball. I wanted to win and everybody wanted to win, but at the end of the day, it was about competing, slapping each other on the back, and being friends for a moment, even though you were competitors for a few minutes.
Right. Yeah. I also am a part of a support group of pre-liver transplant and post-liver transplant patients through UAB. We meet every Monday over Zoom, and I've been doing that since last July, and I love that group. I have to have my Monday meetings. I have it starts my week right. But I've heard some people in there that are post-transplant talk about their view on life after transplant, and obviously not to take life for granted, but kind of living life out because your donor didn't get the chance to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And that's one of those is, they have a legacy. You've got a legacy, but you want to use their legacy, to continue on, because you owe that to them. That's like, of course, this happens to me all the time. And that just happened to me at supper just a little while ago. Every time I eat, I sneeze at least 2 times. And I'm sure, it's because of I've been told it's because of my histamine levels probably changed with the new liver. But it reminds me every day about my liver donor because, his legacy lives on through me. And I owe it to him to be the most positive person I can be.
Yeah, and to just max life out, to live it to its fullest.
Randy, is there anything you want to ask?
You know what? Just listening to that, Danielle, I feel like you may have a dual journey there because when my decision to stay, sober all this year, it was to kind of redo my own life. So you've got some amends you can make to yourself. For me, it was a relationship with my parents, and I lost them a couple of years ago, but it was a great relationship after that. So you talked about your family. That really is one of those things that you get to go back and redo down the road a little bit.
Oh yeah, my family, they mean everything to me. I had COVID a few weeks ago. There were several of us apparently that caught COVID from the transplant games. Well, I went back like a week and a half later to my doctor, and the test was still positive. And at that point, he said I needed to isolate. And let me tell you, I got myself down in the dumps because I couldn't be around family that I see all the time. And I was like, man, I didn't realize just how much they keep me going until now when I can't be around them.
Yeah.
Daniel, I know exactly what you mean. That's like when I had a car wreck and was down 3 months, and then I was down with the liver transplant. And I told my wife, I said, I can't do this. I cannot sit around the house because I've always been out in the public and work with the public. I'm used to being around people all the time. I said, I can't deal with this mentally. And of course, she gave me the idea, well, go to work for your mother because she was doing pottery at the time, and, to do something to occupy your time because, once you're used to being around people, you miss that. And when and I think you've probably learned too that you've learned to love better. You've learned to cherish every moment better. It just changes your whole focus on life.
Oh yeah. I mean, I would say that I hated that it took what it did to get me to realize that. But if I didn't go down that road, I wouldn't be where I am now. So I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, because I think you look back though, and no regrets, and because it was, going through everything I went through, I had to have 5 ERCPs done. I was in pain because something was wrong after my liver transplant. There's a lot of tears involved too. Chrissy can tell you that, but I wouldn't go back and change anything because it's made me a better person.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Phil, I know it's running kind of late in the show, but I'd be remiss. And every time you do one of these shows, I want to make sure that people of, and I live in Tennessee. I know y'all are in Alabama. If you want to be a liver or a donor in the state of Tennessee, all you have to do is sign the back of your driver's license. It is a living will, and your wishes will be honored. So if you're in the state of Tennessee, please consider signing the back of your license and become a donor. And I think this makes it easier in any state to do that.
Of course, you can go on the Legacy of Hope website and register also. You don't have to necessarily put it on your license because you can register and you'll be put in a database or whatever, because you could save somebody's life in the future, because we're not going to be here for forever. But it's wonderful, Danielle, to hear your story. We're praying everything works out well for you. I'm excited for you. I got to meet you, during, and of course we wouldn't have crossed paths if it wasn't for the Olympic Games. Same with Wes and same with Tabitha. But we've enjoyed having you on and you sharing your story. Is there anything you want to add? I know you still got a lot of life to live, but is anybody you want to give a shout out to or anything like that?
No, I don't think any shout outs, but I'm just, like I said, in my particular case, each new day is a day that I wasn't supposed to have. So, people laugh that I smile all the time, but I can't help but smile. And, you don't have to be happy all the time, but I have a reason to be happy. I have a reason, to wake up every day and, try and be a positive light in somebody's life. And to tell them, life's worth living, live it to its fullest, and be an organ donor.
Yeah, be an organ donor, that's for sure. Yeah, because we need a lot of positive messages around this world, because this world has gotten crazy. And of course, Danielle, when you get through all this, we'd love to have you back on and talk about your journey from this point on. To let us know how things go with your liver transplant now, because it'll be so interesting to hear for people that we're going to have live donors to be able to move forward through UAB, because that's going to be a wonderful program.
It is. I cannot wait. I'm already a talker as it is, but yeah, once I get my transplant and I have the other part of my life to live, I'm not going to be able to be quiet, because I've got too much to share. Too much good stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely
To do a podcast. So
yeah.
It took that to get him on air.
Yeah. I've learned to like this pretty good. Randy begged me, and I didn't want to do it, but I thought, well, what the heck, I'll try. But we've gotten 3 stories from the transplant games to come on here. Yeah, and then that's a wonderful to share the messages, because everybody needs to hear your testimony, because it's very important, Danielle.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If it touches just one person, then my job is done.
Well, I can tell you, it touched one person. It meant the world to hear it to me. So, thank you.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm glad I could be here to share my side of things. But yeah, the world, these days people just seek out the negative, and I think it's a waste of energy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Definitely. That's like Danielle, you heard all the stuff about the Olympics we just saw. I wish people could be involved and came to the Transplant Olympics. That's the true meaning of life, I think.
Yes, yes, in every form.
Well, Randy, if you want to wrap us up again, Danielle, thanks so much for joining us. We'll look forward to talking with you in the future, and we'll be praying for you. We hope everything goes well. And, and it was a delight to have you on. It's been a delight to meet you a couple of times, and it was great to sit down and talk with you a little bit.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm glad we got through the hiccups in the beginning because it was all worthwhile. It was worth those hiccups to get through.
It's not even the worst hiccups we ever had. You should see some of the stuff we get into. I want to thank everybody. I can't wait till part 2, Danielle. You're coming back for part 2.
That's right, part 2, 2.0.
She's going to come back and tell us part 2, Danielle Patterson. I'm Randall Cunningham. Thank you. God bless. We'll see you down the road.